me here. Well, folks, thank you for being here this afternoon. My name is John Ritterbush. I'm one of the librarians here at UNK. I'm also the library's liaison to the psychology department. And so if you take away nothing else from today's class, I hope it will be this, that if you have questions about doing research for this project or maybe for other psychology classes down the road, please feel free to get in touch with me after class. I'd be happy to work with you by email or set up an appointment to meet one-on-one here at the library. I'll share my contact information with you in just a moment so you know how to do just that. I've tried to set up here a little bit of a roadmap of where we're headed today for our library instruction session. We're going to spend a lot of time looking at the Psychology 270 Research Guide, which is listed on your handout there. I've got several links at the top of the first page there. We'll spend some time looking at that research guide, some of the resources and search tips that I think would be most helpful for your research project this semester. Following that, we're going to take an extended tour of PsycInfo, which is really the bread and butter of doing research in psychology. It's the foremost database that we have available within the psychology subject area. We'll also spend a little time test driving what I call a time machine. That is looking at references both somewhat in the future and in the past as they're linked within PsycInfo, and to some degree also in Google Scholar as well. And we'll wrap up and finally with a kind of a quick drive-through of Loper Search and Google Scholar to get a little bit of a feel for what the strengths are of those two resources, maybe in comparison to PsycInfo. So if you have any questions, please just feel free to shout out, raise your hand, let me know. Dr. Watkins, you as well, if I leave something out here. So we'll press on here. And starting here at the library homepage, library.unk.edu as listed on your handout there. A lot of links available off of the homepage here for doing research. Of course, we have a search box up here at the top in the green area for Loper Search. I'll do a quick demonstration of that toward the end of the class. But Loper Search is a great resource for really searching any subject area. It covers a lot of different databases from one search box. One link I want to call your attention to is under Research Assistance, and it's this link labeled Research Guides. And when you click into that, you'll see here a list, a pretty lengthy list of guides that have been developed by other UNK librarians, including myself, that correspond to a number of the departments on campus. So you will see one, a subject guide here for psychology, kind of toward the bottom list, of the list there. That's going to be a very kind of generic guide as kind of a starting point for any student in psychology. But also on the right side of the page, you'll notice we have a number of course-specific research guides, and that's where I really want to spend some more time this afternoon looking in depth here at the Psychology 270 course guide. If you want to click into that, if you've been mousing along on your web browser, that's great. Go ahead and click into that research guide. If you didn't already open up a browser and you're maybe playing catch-up, I do have the address for that research guide. It's the second link on your handout there at near the top of the page. It's guides.library.unk.edu/PSY270. And at this landing page, right, we've got a little bit of a decision here. We do have two sections going on this semester, one for Dr. Strain's class and one here for Dr. Watkins. And we'll click into this to see specific links here and search tips that correspond to your research project on contagious behavior. First and foremost, I do want to mention I have my contact information here on the right side of the page. Again, if you have any research questions after today's class, please feel free to get in touch with me. If you're working in the afternoons or have other scheduled conflicts and it works best for you to meet after 5 p.m., and that's not an issue. Just give me a call or shoot me an email. Let me know. We're open till midnight here, and well, I'm usually up till midnight anyway. So if that works best for your schedule, please let me know. Along the left side of the page here, what I've tried to list at the top here are some suggested search terms that correspond to this idea of contagious behavior. And we'll experiment with this in just a few minutes here using the PsycInfo database. But what I've tried to include here are some tips. I'll do a demonstration of this in a minute. We'll kind of come back to that. Further below, on that left side of the page, again, as something of a starting point, if you don't know anything about this idea of contagious behavior, what I've tried to include here are some articles that I found in the last semester that pertain to contagious behavior. You might want to click through these, get some kind of background knowledge, build your prior knowledge as it relates to this phenomenon. I do include a note here on this very first article that because it's published in 2014, that they'll more likely have some recent references that would pertain to this subject. So if you're struggling, kind of grasping at straws to find other articles or books that relate to this topic, click into this article and we'll look at the references at the end of that article as a way to get some other sources that might be relevant to the topic. While I'm here at the bottom of the page, I'll mention too, I do have a few recommended ebooks that reference contagious behavior here. All of these are online with unlimited users, meaning everybody in the class could hit any of these links right now and view these entries. Within the Encyclopedia of Social Psychology, I've tried to include in the notes here direct links that go specifically to those entries on behavioral contagion and emotional contagion. Those might be of interest to you. This encyclopedia entry was published in 2007, so it's getting a little bit dated, as is the case with most encyclopedias, not quite as current as a journal article would be. But again, it could be helpful for background information on this particular topic. Here's a 2012 ebook on curious behavior, chapters on yawning and laughing that I've highlighted here with direct links also as examples of contagious behavior that might be of interest to you. So any questions about what you've seen so far in the research guide, contact information? I realize this is a 200 level class. How many of you are comfortable with the idea of finding scholarly journal articles? Or actually, let me back up for a moment. What constitutes a scholarly journal article? What types of features would apply to that type of scholarly resource? Any ideas? I'm sorry?
Peer reviews.
Peer reviews. And could you describe a little bit what that peer review process maybe means? Maybe you've heard it before, and if you're not sure, that's fine.
Articles by other experts.
Excellent. That's exactly right. I'm not sure if everyone heard that in the back, but what constitutes a peer-reviewed journal is the fact that other scholarly experts, in this case in psychology, have reviewed the research done by an author or a group of authors, and they've kind of put their stamp of approval on both the literature review, the data collection, the methods that were applied, the conclusions that were drawn. And it's a pretty rigorous process, right? I mean, it's a lot more rigorous than what goes into publishing, even in the New York Times, where they're cranking out news articles every day. It's a process by which, no offense to Dr. Watkins, she may write an outstanding article and submit it to a journal of psychology and have that be turned down or sent back to her with suggestions for revisions or other analysis of the data, perhaps. So it's something that happens to probably all the faculty here at one point or another in their various fields of specialty. So it is a rigorous process, and that's why we set those scholarly peer-reviewed journals at such a high standard and a premium, trying to tap into those for research, particularly in the social sciences. So I've talked a little bit about these peer-reviewed journal articles. A great way to find those types of sources is to use the PsycInfo database, which I've linked here kind of in the center of the research guide. One note about PsycInfo, there are kind of some subsets of PsycInfo that you could log into specifically. There's this subset called Psych Articles that looks at just journals published by the American Psychological Association. There's also a component called Psych Books, which pulls in, as you might guess, book chapters related to psychology. These are, it's not going to be, popular reading type of material. It's still going to be scholarly material compiled in these book chapters. What PsycInfo will do is it does cover both of these databases, as well as some other types of sources, such as doctoral dissertations. So really for any research topic on psychology, I do recommend clicking into PsycInfo as a starting point. And I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. And what you'll see with PsycInfo is not too uncommon from many other library databases. You'll see these rows show up at the top of the page, and there's a purpose for having those rows there, and that's to sort of help you to think about your research topic in at least two, if not three or four different concepts. And so we'll use that to our advantage. To think of our research topic, looking at contagious or contagion and behavior, I'll try to split that across into two different rows here. But before I get too carried away, I do want to at least make mention of a significant feature within PsycInfo that sets it apart from a lot of other library databases, and that is the thesaurus feature. I'm typing in behavior here, and you're seeing at least some other types of terms that show up in the drop-down box here as maybe variations on that term. There's also a checkbox up here that allows me to say, hey, I need to get some ideas on what are some subject terms that are related to behavior. And when I check that box and click on search, what happens is instead of getting a list of articles or book chapters coming back, instead, what I'm now tapping into is this thesaurus within PsycInfo. And what PsycInfo is trying to do is, okay, well, here are the instances where behavior shows up within a descriptor. And each of these descriptors applies to one or thousands of articles that exist within the PsycInfo database. And behavior is pretty generic here. If I wanted to try to be more specific, I could click on the behavior link. And now here you'll really start to see, I think, some of these thesaurus features where they first tell you, okay, this is when the term first was introduced to the database, or even the print periodicals back in 1967. And the scope note, and now here are some more specific terms, getting beyond just this wide scope or subject of behavior. If I want to get more specific, I could use these more narrow terms instead to do a search within the database. Social behavior was one that might be more specific to, again, the topic that you're investigating this semester. And if I were to click on social behavior, I can, again, continue to drill down. And here I'm starting to see, here's a more narrow term. Look at that, contagion showing up here, along with some other more narrow terms. But this is giving me an idea that social behavior may grab more articles than contagion would by itself. So that's kind of a brief explanation of the relationship here. You're starting with social behavior, probably has thousands of articles related to it. Contagion may have just maybe 100 or 200 related to that topic. The thesaurus can be kind of a tricky tool to use. And you see all these check boxes where you can check boxes related to specific terms and then add it to your search query. And I'll demonstrate that, but I will say sometimes this kind of blows up on me. So if that happens to you, don't feel too frustrated. What I would encourage you to do is maybe just jot down some notes about the terms that you find here in the thesaurus, so that if the search kind of gets mangled up here in the search box at the top, you've got your list of words to go back to. I'm going to try a demonstration here of social behavior, contagion, and I'm going to join that with an or and click add. And what happens is then PsycInfo takes those terms that I've checked, throws it into the search box here, and at this point it's going to look for any articles that contain either of those words or both. That's what this or operator is doing in the middle here. The DE tag is not something you often see in the database here, but it's serving a particular purpose, and it's telling PsycInfo, I want to find only those articles that have either social behavior or contagion as a subject to describe that article. It's going to narrow down the results by using that. So I'll click on search here. And still getting 16,000 results, an awful lot of results here, just by searching those two particular terms. Let me just pause for a moment. I want to ask if there are any questions about what I've been demonstrating so far in the thesaurus. That's a pretty powerful tool. I will say, back on the research guide, if you want to experiment a little bit further with that thesaurus, there are some videos in YouTube that have been developed by developers of PsycInfo. I would recommend maybe checking those out after class to get another presentation of how that thesaurus feature can work for you. So that's linked off the research guide right under PsycInfo. No questions? Maybe a little overload on the thesaurus. I would understand that. Well, I have a lot of articles here. We've been looking at social behavior or contagion. As an example, if I wanted to narrow down the scope of my results a little bit, I can do that. I do have these limiters that appear along the left side of the screen. One of those limiters is for those scholarly peer-reviewed journals. And it's pretty effective. I mean, it screened out about a third of our results just by checking that box here. We screened out the doctoral dissertations, the book chapters. Now we're looking at just the peer-reviewed journal articles. And the advantage, again, with PsycInfo is you will not see in these results any articles coming from the New York Times or Psychology Today magazine. Those won't make it into the PsycInfo database. So that should increase your confidence that you're working with peer-reviewed research just by doing a search within PsycInfo. You've got some other limiters here as well. One that's also commonly used in many classes is this date limiter. You can use either the slider bar or plug in a date. I'll just go back about 10 years. And again, I've cut out another almost half of the articles left here. So still about 5,000 results that have one or both of those terms within it. But again, you can filter your results that way to try to maybe minimize some of the information overload that you get. Now, how many of you have used PsycInfo maybe for another class already by chance, maybe in psychology or education? I just see a couple hands. Okay. Within some of these results, the reason I ask is I didn't know how many of you might be familiar with linking to full text. And this is actually a good example here in this set that we have several results that do not have a PDF icon to the full text of an article. Let's see, well, I'll just pick on number 1 here as an example. What I do have, instead of that PDF icon, is this link to connect to the locate full text of this item within our journal finder. And when I click that link, I'll get another tab or window to open up here. Again, this is in the library's journal finder. And what the journal finder will do is just repeat back to me, okay, here's the article I'm looking for, a very new article published just this month here. And these are the databases that the library has which would have access to this article. In this case, there's only one database. It happens to be Science Direct. And if I want to get right to this article, I would follow kind of like reading a book page from left to right. Start with the article link. If that's available to you, that's going to be the most direct route to get to that journal article. So one more click here. And the landing page may look a little different depending on the database, but generally somewhere on the page you'll see a PDF icon. And just like it appeared, if they even still print the journal, it would look a lot like this. We've got the PDF version. And again, just to underscore what a peer-reviewed journal article looks like, almost always these articles will have not just the title at the top, but the list of authors and typically their affiliation, often another university, somewhere in the world listed right there at the top. You'll see an abstract or a summary of what this article's about, what was the problem that they were investigating, what were their research methods, and then in a nutshell, what conclusions did these authors arrive at. And following that, a lot of section headings. Introduction, often maybe a literature review. You may see a heading like that. Now we're starting to get into the data of what they investigated here. So we're looking at a quantitative study here. More headings. And then generally toward the bottom, you'll see results and maybe a discussion or a conclusion section. Here we go, toward the bottom, discussion. Again, where they try to bring it all back together and say, now we've looked at the data and crunched these numbers. What do we know now that we didn't previously? And then, of course, at the very end, a very lengthy list of references starting on the right side of the page and continuing on at least one more page here. Again, if I didn't touch on this earlier, if you can find one article that's close to your research topic, do look at the references, because typically you'll find at least a handful of other articles that are at least somewhat relevant to your research topic, maybe even spot on, maybe even more directly related than the article you started with. So I told this in another class this morning, it is not plagiarism to borrow sources from other scholars who've done the research previously. You're not quoting them directly. You're not claiming their ideas as your own. Instead, you're letting them do the legwork for you. And since they're a little bit further along the scholarship path than you are, let's leverage that expertise and use some of these sources and apply that to your own research project. So do take advantage of that. Questions about linking to full text? Let's see here. While I'm in PsycInfo, I'm going to jump down in the results here. Here are some linked full text as an example. I have to go further down here. I was hoping to find, I may adjust my time frame just a little bit further here because I think I'm getting too much new stuff. Here we go, that's better. At the beginning of our class, I talked about this idea of a time machine. Where that time machine feature kind of comes into play, one of those options is within the PsycInfo database. Here in this particular example, you'll see a link on some of these results, particularly older articles, more than a year old at least, where you'll start to see cited references links. What that acts as is basically a time machine kind of looking backwards from the point at which this article was written and published. So picking on number one here as an example, this is the 2011 article on dynamic social networks here. And if I were to click on the cited references here, what I would get is a list of 46 books or articles that had been linked within the PsycInfo database. So again, it's another way to look at what did these scholars reference and research as they were conducting their study. So it's a time machine to look backwards that can be really helpful. In some cases, here's one. And again, I may not have gone far enough back. I'm at 2011 here. In some instances, you'll see a link labeled times cited in this database, and that acts as a time machine looking forward. It tells me that this article written by Christopher Tilley in 2011, at least one other person has already cited his research from 2011 in a more recent article. So sometime between January 2012 and today, at least one other author has referenced that article. Again, use both of those links, and you can expand the number of results that you have available for your research, whether you're looking backward or forward. Both of those can be very handy. And that's a feature that most library databases don't have. Loper Search, as I'll mention or talk about in just a minute here, doesn't have that feature. PsycInfo does. So it's a valuable tool that you can leverage to expand the number of sources that you have available. Dr. Watkins, is there anything else that I maybe should mention about PsycInfo that would be helpful for your research project?
Can they look at the proper citation?
Yes.
Is that in this one?
Yes. Yeah, they sure can. In fact, thank you for reminding me of that. Each of these articles, you do have the option to kind of tuck them away in a shopping cart as you're going through the database here. I'm just clicking these at random as if I happen to find these of interest or relevance to my research topic. I can put them in this folder, and the folder appears both at the top here and on the side, either place. And I can send all of these article references, and in some cases the full text, to myself in an email message. And within that email, there is an option to format it for APA citation. That's one approach to do that. Go back here one level. Another way to get to those APA references is if you click the article title itself on any of these, on any result screen, you'll get a much more detailed list of information, of course, all the authors, the abstract, and so forth. And on the right side over here is kind of another toolbar here, including a cite feature. And one of those citation options is APA format. Let's just see, I'd like to pause for a moment, see how PsycInfo does on this one. Because there are some tricks to APA citation style, particularly related to capitalization. And I often find the EBSCO databases that include PsycInfo sometimes louse up that capitalization, so I do want to warn you about that. The authors' names look pretty good to me, the year. In this case, I think they've got the article title spot on. The only glitch I'm seeing here, and this is, maybe I'm being nitpicky, but let's be careful here. Let's not capitalize the word of or the, I think, in the journal title, what you see in italics here. Those, I think, could be lowercase in APA style. But I have from time to time, using the database, sometimes I'll see the article title in all caps. What reason, I'm not sure, but that does happen more often than I'd like it to. I would suggest about 40 to 50% of the time, there's some sort of a capitalization error, either in the article title and or the journal title. So this is a big help. I mean, you could still copy and paste this into your list of references, but you still also need to proof it before you turn in your assignment. Zap out the capitals that shouldn't be there, for example. It does have the DOI number. That's a requirement for APA 6 style. So that's handy that they've got that included there as well. Is that,
Yeah, the issue number is a problem when it doesn't read page name, and clearly with numbers that high, it doesn't read page name. But that's a complicated issue. But I do think this is a good source to, start it, but you need to become familiar enough that you know what's wrong with this and fix it. So like he said, use it to start with, but then go back and prove it.
Okay, well that's, in a nutshell, APA style. I will mention back here on the research guide, along the top here, I do have a page or a few pages that pertain to APA style, including in-text citations and works cited. You can click on any of those drop downs and it will include here, just as we were talking about, both how to format a journal article, if it has a DOI number, if it doesn't, here's an example. And then as Dr. Watkins just mentioned here, the non-continuous or continuous pagination, those examples, what those look like. On this page here as well. So it's not a replacement for your APA style manual. If you don't already own one, I would encourage you to pick one up, but you can refer back to that if you're in a pinch here trying to wrap up a paper. So go back here. I do want to mention here just a couple of other sources here besides PsycInfo. In PsycInfo, its advantage is that you're really laser focused on the research related to psychology. You're not going to have education journals show up in there. You won't have newspaper articles show up in there. But if that seems too constrained, a couple of other sources that you may want to try using, one would be Loper Search and the other is Google Scholar. And as I mentioned, I think toward the beginning of the class here, Loper Search is basically our approach or our answer to Google, by which you could use one search box and search dozens of databases across multiple subject areas. So in this case here, we'll do and before I click search, I'll mention what I'm trying to describe what I'm doing here with this search query. I'm asking Loper Search to look for social behavior as an exact phrase. So find articles that have those two words in that exact order. That's one requirement. The other requirement, notice I don't have any ands or ors in this mix here, so Loper Search knows the more words I add, the fewer results I'm going to get. It's just going to automatically put an and between every single word. what I'm doing here with contagio and an asterisk is I'm looking for contagious or contagion, either form of those words. That asterisk serves as a wild card, so it looks for, again, any combination of letters that follows, in this case, the letter O. Both this trick with the quotation marks as a phrase and that asterisk as a wild card, both of those tricks, those will work in PsycInfo, they work in local search, they will also work in Google. So that might be a way to, again, enhance your search results regardless of what search tool you're using. It's pretty universal. I'll click on search here, and just to give you an idea of the number of results we're getting here in comparison to PsycInfo, we've got 20,000 results coming back here. And again, this is not going to be just psychology journal articles, but it will also include newspapers, books, book chapters, and so forth. And local search, if you see some articles here from psychology related, it is because local search does include PsycInfo within the mix. So we've got psych articles here. Number 2 is from a database called Medline. Again, these may not be spot on specific to the research topic that you're looking at, so we may need to fine tune the search a little more. But we're getting a lot of results. Here's another one from Psych Articles. Here's one from PsycInfo. But now I'm also getting an ebook. Business Source Premier. So a lot of different databases. It's looking across the entire spectrum of subject disciplines here. A handy thing with local search is that just like PsycInfo, if you want to zero in on those peer-reviewed articles, there's a checkbox to do just that. And also date limiters as well. And our numbers are a little bit larger than I think what we were ending up with in PsycInfo as a comparison. Not that much larger, but we are pulling in some other ebooks and maybe business articles, and newspaper articles, and so forth. So local search will cast a much wider net than what PsycInfo does, and that can be a good and a bad thing. Notice in here we don't have those links to cited references, so that's a feature that we lose in local search. But again, if I click the title of any of these articles and I want to look at the citation for a particular article, I'll have that available to me here too. Wow, I think they may have this one just right. Looks good to me from here in terms of the APA style on the capitalization. Scroll up a little more. So article title looks good here. We've got a capital right after the colon, which is kosher by APA 6. Journal title, and there's an italics there, volume number is italicized too, and that DOI number. So again, you could copy or paste that in or email the citation to yourself, whatever is more convenient. There's one last feature that I want to highlight off of the research guide here, and switching back to that. And I mentioned this also in Dr. Strain's class as well, the option to use Google Scholar to find articles. And there is a link on this research guide. I'll mention that this is a customized link. It's not as simple as scholar.google.com. Instead, it's configured to first, if you're off campus, route you through the campus servers so that you are authenticated as a UNK student. And if you do that, I realize you have to go through this link, but if you do take the time to do that, the advantage is when you're in Google Scholar, you will start to see UNK full text appear next to some of those search results, as I hope to demonstrate here. And zoom in a little bit more. I actually got a lot fewer articles than I expected here, 510 results. Maybe I had a typo in social behavior. I don't think so, no. Nope. And I think we're starting to see some of these full text links here, HTML from Springer.com, full view. Some of these are freely available, it looks like, on the web. Number 3 here has a PDF from, looks like a university in Italy. It may be in Italian, so that may not be of much help to us. Scroll down a little bit further. Here's PDF from JSTOR, which the library has access to, of course. So it's not as many bells and whistles, okay, as PsycInfo or Loper Search. It's obviously this is designed to serve the whole world, and so the fact that we're able to get some cross-links here for the full text to UNK sources is kind of a bonus, but it's not maybe as robust as what you would have if you were to use PsycInfo or Loper Search. There is a feature that I think is helpful and perhaps best within Google Scholar, even perhaps better than PsycInfo, and that is for many of these results, you'll see here these links that say cited by and then some number. I'll pick on that one here from JSTOR as an example. If you can see there, this article titled Recent Changes in Heterosexual Attitudes, Norms, and Behaviors Among Unmarried Thai Men has been cited by 28 other authors, either in book chapters or articles. In much of my experience, these numbers that you'll see for cited by are going to be a lot higher in Google Scholar than you'll see in PsycInfo or in most other library databases. There are a lot of reasons that go into that, but if you find one article that you think is really helpful, I'll just pick on this one here next as an example, borderline personality disorder. If you take the article title and paste it into the Google Scholar search box, you'll get usually back just one or a handful of results that should be a match for the article that you're looking for. And then you can see, okay, who has cited this more recently? So instead of dealing with a 2011 article, apparently 42 other people since 2011 have referenced it, maybe built a little bit further along on that research. So Google Scholar, this is where I think it has a particular strength, is being able to find other authors who have referenced research in the past here more effectively. So that really is kind of the summary of what I wanted to try to illustrate this afternoon in terms of covering PsycInfo, Loper Search, and just a little teaser here on Google Scholar. Let me just ask if there are any questions about kind of where you go from here next on your research project.
I'm kind of thinking there might be one other thing to show in Google Scholar.
Yeah.
That is, let's say, like the name Provine, R. Provine, I think is the name that had an article for contagion. So if you put Provine in there, maybe R. Provine, that will probably show you other articles that person's done. And yeah, so now you see other things that they've done. It might not have been referenced. You wouldn't have necessarily found all of those the other way. So if there's an author that's written something, it's sometimes helpful to go to that author.
Absolutely. So exactly. This, again, like Loper Search, is going to cover way beyond the boundaries of what's maybe considered traditional psychology. So American Scientist, Pathology shows up here. I see a couple of other journals that do look like psychology journals, but absolutely you can use that to expand the number of sources maybe that you have available for your research.
And it could be that they do lots of other research that's not related to what you're looking at. So
there is a feature in both PsycInfo and Loper Search. If you want to look for a specific author, you can do that. I'll see if I can get back to that feature. Under the advanced search in Loper Search, you'll see a box here, a set of boxes. It looks a lot like PsycInfo with the 3 rows. And at least on Loper Search, it may not all be the exact same person here, but I'm getting 318 results in this particular case. So, is Robert R?
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of filtered it down a little bit. You'll probably see some overlap, like New Scientist here, I think was in the Google set of results. But Google Scholar does look beyond journal articles, and it looks beyond dissertations. It's really scanning the entire web, most of it anyway. And again, to some degree, that's good and bad. You may get some less than reputable research that manages to get through Google's indexing system. But that's still pretty few and far between. I mean, for the most part, most of what you'll see there is honest research. I'm thinking of these predatory journals, for example. Yeah.
Can you say a little bit about what if somebody comes across a dissertation? Because usually it's not that easy to get the dissertation itself. What would you have to do?
Sure. Well, things are a little better now. We used to have a real hard time with getting dissertations. These are scholarly works produced by doctoral students. It's not exactly considered peer-reviewed research in the same way that a journal article is, but those dissertations are valuable because oftentimes they'll have really long lists of references, an extensive literature review. So again, maybe the dissertation itself isn't as important to you as the list of references that appear at the end. To get to those sources, and I should add this to our research guide here, but I'll go back here to the library homepage for a moment. And we do have a database called Dissertations and Theses. If you click on, from the library homepage here, go to Articles and Databases. Oh, and we'll zoom in. We've got a group here for dissertations and theses under the subjects. Click on Recommended. Several different options here, but really the best one, I think, for our purposes would be to use this one called ProQuest Dissertations and Theses Global. We just added this late last fall. It provides PDFs, full-text access to 2 million dissertations and theses going back to the late 1990s, roughly, and maybe a few older than that. So if it's been published recently, in many cases, it's going to be available in full text within this database, ProQuest Dissertations and Theses Global. There are some other ones here, like this open access theses. That's a freebie, but it's a little smaller set of theses and dissertations than I think what you'll find in ProQuest generally. So, of course, there's one here for UNK specific. These would be the master's theses published by UNK students. That's what this first one is. So that ProQuest link is what I would recommend if you want to do a search. You could use the same keywords that you were using in PsycInfo, apply them to dissertations and theses, and see if you start to get back some comparable results there. So, well, we've covered a lot of ground here. Yeah, and ILL, yes, yes, absolutely. Thank you. We can always get articles. If we don't have it available in full text, we can certainly get those to you within a couple of days using interlibrary loan. I'm not sure if I'll find a great example. We'll try this one here. Well, we've got full text access to that one. If there was an article you came across here and you used the journal finder and it indicated, sorry, no holdings available, instead of an article link here, one option is to use interlibrary loan. We can get those articles within a couple days, no charge to you. And to request that article, it's as simple as actually just clicking this link here at the bottom. It'll take you to our interlibrary loan service, and you log in using your easy username and password. And what's really slick about that link at the bottom of the last screen is if you click that, log into Iliad, it will automatically fill in really all of the relevant information we need for our request. The journal title, article title, ISSN number, all of those details. And at the bottom of the screen, if I click Submit the Request, it'll send that up to our interlibrary loan staff upstairs. Don't use this the night before your paper is due. We won't be able to be much help to you at that point. But typically, 2 business days, we can get an article to you as a PDF. You don't have to worry about where it's coming from. We'll negotiate those details. When that does come in, you will receive an email informing you that the article is available to you in this Iliad system. And that email will have a link right back to this page, prompting you to log in. And down here under View Received Articles, it's about the 5th button down, I think. You would click on that, and if I had one I had requested in the last 30 days, it would show up to this page with a link that you can download. Do keep in mind these articles only appear for 30 days. After that, they clean out space on the server. Those PDFs can get pretty big. So if you need to use it longer, even if you don't think you need to use it longer, I would strongly encourage you to download it or print it off so that you can refer back to it later on if you need to. Thank you for that reminder. That's a free service, so I would strongly encourage students to take advantage of that.
Yeah, if you see something that's like, oh, I can't get it, so I'm not going to bother.
Yeah.
It might be the key article that you want, and it really is not that hard to get. So don't let that discourage you at all.
I did kind of zip through that process a little bit. So yeah, if you have a question about placing a request, again, just email me and say, this is the article I'm trying to get. You know, can you help me? And I can confirm, oh yeah, we have it here, or no, we can use interlibrary loan and guide you through that process. So, okay. Information overload, I hope not. It's a lot to take in, I realize that. But take small steps at the beginning here. Just remember, we've got the research guide. PsycInfo is a great starting point for your research assignment. Try to identify the best keywords for your topic. Some of those you'll think of off the top of your head. Some you may discover by using the thesaurus in PsycInfo. And if all else fails, certainly, please, by all means, feel free to contact me. I can maybe suggest some other terms that maybe show up deeper in the results that might be helpful to what you're investigating. So, great. Well, thank you all for your attention. I do appreciate your time. I know your class time is very valuable. And again, I hope to see some of you later on, through appointments or at the reference desk out here. I do have one quick little survey here. If you wouldn't mind, just on your web browser there, take a moment to fill out this survey at tinyurl.com/PSY270S15. Should just take a minute. That will help me to know a little bit about what was helpful and maybe what could be made more clear in subsequent classes. And if I see a common thread in your comments, I'll certainly follow up with Dr. Watkins and pass on some notes that I hope might be helpful to all of you. So thank you all very much.